At first blush, the idea of a keyboard case for the iPhone might seem a little bit backward. I mean, it was Steve Jobs who basically said that the mobile phone, if it was going to move forward and reach its full potential, needed to get rid of the physical keyboard and go all screen. And at that time, he was probably right. I'm old enough to have carried a Palm Centro keyboard phone back in the early 2000s, and my wife had and loved her BlackBerry as well. And the physical keyboards on those phones were as much a part of the mystique of the phone itself as the slab of glass was when the first iPhone came out. When the iPhone first launched, it was kind of weird. There were plenty of people who thought there was no way it was going to survive, and the screen plus keyboard model still had plenty of miles left in the tank, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. So why, 18 years after the first iPhone came out, are we here talking about a keyboard case for the iPhone? If Steve Jobs were alive, he might dismiss this as some kind of Luddite Don Quixote sort of attempt at putting something on the iPhone that was never meant to be there. And if the folks at Clicks who make this thing had only made a half-assed attempt at sticking a keyboard on the bottom of a cheap TPU case, I would be inclined to dismiss this as not worth my time as well. But they didn't make a half-assed attempt. They, in fact, made a full-assed attempt, and that full-assed attempt is very appreciated. They succeeded in making not just a physical keyboard that you can stick on your iPhone, but they've made an accessory for the iPhone that not only has the nostalgia factor of that keyboard, but it also adds a ton of functionality to your keyboard. And as a byproduct, not having your keyboard on the screen, it gives you all of the screen back. So you have so much more screen real estate to deal with when you're using your phone. As I was getting ready to do this review, I saw a few people who said, oh, I used it for a couple of days and it's not for me. And if I had only used the Clicks keyboard for a couple of days, I probably would have said it wasn't for me as well, because it does take some time to get used to holding it. It does take some time to get used to figuring out, like, where does your thumb sit and how do you do this thing, and to get comfortable with this new form factor. But after using it now for a couple of weeks, I see that there's a lot of benefit to having this keyboard. Plus, there's a lot of other stuff under the hood that this keyboard can do and actually improve the iPhone experience that I've barely delved into myself. What really impresses me about the Clicks keyboard is not only is it a very well-made case with a lot of attention paid to the detail. I mean, it has a very nice tactile TPU case. It has MagSafe inside the case, so you can use it with MagSafe both for charging and other things. But it's the little things that make it really interesting. There's a slight angle to the keys themselves. They angle kind of up in a crest that goes toward the center of the keyboard. So the keys on this side go up this way, the keys on this side go up this way, and it gives you a nice tactile sensation of like where you are on the keyboard without having to look. And while it's hard to give a sense of like what the clicks are like, they're very, very good. My memory of a physical keyboard was my Palm Centro that I had back in the day, and it had a cramped keyboard. The phone was small. If I remember correctly, the keys themselves were kind of rubbery and sticky and domed, whereas these are more concave. Yes, concave as opposed to convex. As with anything, with my Palm Centro, you got used to using it, and you could sort of like, it was better than triple tap typing, which was the way that we used to do the texting back in the day. But it certainly didn't feel like a premium experience. There are BlackBerry phones out there that certainly did feel like a premium experience, but this isn't like a BlackBerry experience either. The Clicks keyboard is different. The circular keys are nice and spaced out from one another, especially on the iPhone 16 Pro Max version. Each one is really kind of solid and firm to the touch, but then with just the right amount of pressure applied, it has a very satisfying little click. It's difficult to explain that. I mean, you kind of have to feel it to have the experience, but it's also something that I know the people behind the Clicks keyboard case spent a lot of time getting right. And because I know some of the people who were involved with the company, I know that months, if not years, went into trying iteration after iteration until they began to feel like they had what they were looking for. But again, if the Clicks keyboard case was just about putting a physical keyboard on an iPhone, I would tip my hat to them and say, hey, well done, you made a nice keyboard. But the Clicks keyboard does a lot more than that. Once you get that muscle memory going, then you dig deeper into the modifier keys that are on here. You have your Shift key, which if you double tap Shift, it'll do all caps. You have your sort of, I guess, they call this an Alt key, but it has a 1, 2, 3 on it, and you can get to all the numbers as well as the parentheses and all the other things that are the secondary functions of each key. Then they have a globe key, they have a command key, they have a Clicks key, a key that will bring up the keyboard, and a microphone key, so you can talk to Siri and that sort of thing. And then Clicks also has their own app, which goes even deeper into what you can do with this thing. So here you have your brightness values for your keyboard, how long it's going to stay on until it times out, and then caps lock. You can select different ways to have alt lock, caps lock, backlight, shortcut, soft return, as opposed to so when you're texting, you can either do a soft return for a new paragraph, or you can do a hard return to send the text. They've got cursor mode, which uses the WASD keys. They've got a battery saving mode, currency symbols, all kinds of different things in here. Here's where I really start to think that the Clicks keyboard comes into its own and shows the potential that it really has. Clicks works with Apple shortcuts to make it easy to do things like call someone you call all the time with a couple of clicks, but also you can send photos, you can turn on the flashlight, you can check the weather, you can put your task list up here for the day, play your favorite playlist from Apple Music, and a lot more. I'm not going to go deep into depth on how all of this stuff works in this video. If you'd like a more detailed video on how to use the Clicks keyboard and how to make the most of it, I'd be glad to do that. Let me know down in the comments. There are a lot more possibilities. Honestly, while the iPhone has the action button now, Clicks has the potential to be dozens of action buttons all at once. The possibilities for what you can do on this keyboard without digging a couple of levels deep into your phone are pretty extensive. And that to me was a surprising use case that I wasn't really expecting. And it's that kind of forward thinking and utilization that I think makes the Clicks keyboard more than just a gimmick, more than just a physical keyboard that you can use with your iPhone. This deeper integration into the operating system opens up possibilities for using the phone that weren't there without the Clicks keyboard. Not everything is roses and daffodils with the Clicks keyboard, though. It does make the phone very big. However, it gives it a certain balance that it doesn't really have on its own. So I kind of like that. But the profile of the case is actually very slim, so you're not actually adding a ton of girth to the phone when you put the Clicks keyboard in. They have a nice sort of tactile, this is vegan leather that they put down here just to give you a little tactile indication of where you're holding the phone. It does take time to get used to this. You're not going to pull the Clicks keyboard out of its box, which is a very nice box, by the way. Well done, folks over there at Clicks, and just be like, okay, now I'm typing away. It does take some time to get used to holding the phone in a different way. It does take some time to get used to where the buttons are on the phone. It does take some time to get used to how the modifier buttons work on here. And then it does take time to figure out how to use the shortcuts, how to program in the shortcuts that you want to use, and to get the keyboard really up and running in the way that makes the most sense for you. However, once you use it for a while, it really does take off and become something that adds to the functionality of the iPhone. Clicks has tons of information on their website as to what it can do and how to do it, as well as a quick start guide in the packaging. Another place where they could have fallen down is, you're not going to want this on your phone all the time. Sometimes you're going to want to have your phone out. So they made it really easy to get this thing off of your phone. And so you just sort of push it out and it pops out. And then you just slide it in at kind of a shallow angle and boom, it's back on. It seems like the folks at Clicks have gone through so many different steps to think about how this case can be an additive experience to the iPhone. They came up with a super high quality keyboard that has the exact kind of tactile feel that you would want. And the case itself has a great feel in the hand, but they weren't done there. They then went on to figure out how to make it more than just a keyboard. They've shown me that an accessory like a keyboard case doesn't have to be a throwback, and that's all it is. It can also be a step forward. While mobile phones might have needed to ditch the keyboard to reach their true potential 20 years ago, the Clicks keyboard proves that it's worth looking into the past and thinking about how the old ways can inform the future. And they've done a fantastic job. Check it out down in the description below. If this is your first time here, thanks so much for stopping by. Please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Come on back and see me again sometime soon. I really would appreciate it. If you've been here before, thanks so much for coming back again. As the ancient prophets once said, everything old can be new again.